All right, in this video, we're going to continue our conversation with tires to where we're actually going to apply and answer some questions regarding different types of tires. All right, so the first question that you see here on your worksheet, you're dealing with stuff that was in the first video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and answer these things. So we have 205. Now, if you are someone who needs an introduction of how I'm getting all these numbers, I would recommend going and watching the first video of tires, and that'll explain all these numbers and it'll explain how I got it. Now, just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going with this, and that is we have two tires. Okay, now what most people like to do when they get a vehicle is switch out the tires. Now, if you have a truck or an SUV, usually that involves getting a bigger tire. So, like for example, in this example, this is the original tire that came with the car. All right, so this is the factory tire. Okay, now the new size is bigger. Okay, the new size is bigger. When you put bigger tires on your car, it's actually going to change a couple things when it comes to how your car operates. Now, your car is still going to drive down the road, so that's not an issue. But what it's going to do is it's going to actually throw off your speedometer and odometer. All right. Now, the information that we're going to take is going to be this 80.4, and it's going to be 81, the circumference. Okay. Now, the way this works is conclusions. Based on your calculations, the first thing we need to find is what is K, and that is the circumference of the larger tire, which ends up being 81, over the circumference of the older tire, which was the factory tire, 80.4. So when you do the math, 81 divided by 80.4, you get, okay, sorry. All right, so it ends up being 1.007, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to round this up 101. I'm just going to go ahead and round the two decimal places. So it's 1.01. Okay. Now, according to John's odometer, he traveled 80,000 miles on his new aftermarket tires. In reality, how far did John actually travel? Now, basically, what K is, and I'm going to kind of use Coach Fordism here, and K is basically margin of error. All right, so I'm going to kind of do roughly margin of error. Now, the way your car's computer is set up, it's set up to where every time your tire every time your car turns the wheel, turns its tire, the tire rotates, it's assuming that you're using the factory size tire. Okay, unless you recalibrate your speedometer and odometer, it doesn't know that you now have a bigger tire. So what that means is when the car is driving 80,000 miles, the car thinks to itself, hey, I'm driving 80,000 miles. But it, again, has no idea that you actually put on bigger tires. So, from a mathematical standpoint, to figure out how far you've actually driven in reality, you take your 80,000 and then you times it by K to figure out how many miles have you actually driven. And when you do that, in reality, your car has driven 80,800 miles. So what your car says and what reality is different because of the fact that you never calibrated your odometer. Now, according to John's speedometer, he thinks he's driving 45 miles per hour. All right. So again, the car thinks it's still on its regular factory tires and it thinks it's going 45 miles per hour. Well, let's see how fast you're actually going. So we're going to multiply it by K. So 45 times 1.01, and you're driving 45.45 miles per hour. Now, that's not really much of a change. In fact, I'll be honest with you, the difference between the regular tire and the new tire, there's not much difference. So you're not really going to see a huge change here. But if we were using much bigger tires, you will see a difference. All right. Now, lastly, when John bought his car, his MPG was 16. What is his new MPG? Again, take 16 times 1.01. So 16 times 1.01. I don't think there's going to be much change here because he didn't really drive. He's not really driving with bigger tires. So it's like, what would you conclude with your calculations? So your conclusion would be bigger tires means you are going faster and farther than uh, than you're going faster and farther than what you think you you are. That'd probably be the best way to say it. Okay. Now moving on. All right. So lastly, a couple of questions here, and then we're going to and then that would be pretty much this video. So in this question here, let's go back to, all right, so in this question here, it says, if a tire had a sidewall height of 5.5 inches and a rim size of 18 inches, find the overall height of the tire. Okay, now I went ahead and gave you a picture here. This is basically just simple math. You know what you're doing here. Now with this picture, and I recommend you, if you don't have a picture for these questions, you should draw one, and I'll kind of give you an example a little later. So if the sidewall height is 5.5, that means the top and bottom sidewall is 5.5. If the rim height was 18, the overall height of the car from there to there, or the overall height of the tire, would be 29 inches because you're just simply adding sidewall, sidewall, and the rim. Now, in these next questions, if a tire has a rim size of 15, oh, here we go, and a circumference. So if I ever give you a circumference, if you're ever dealt with this question where you're given the circumference, the very first thing you have to do, and I'll type this so you see it, the very first thing is convert circumference back to height. Now, very simple. And the way you do that is by taking the circumference and then dividing it by 3.14. So you're dividing the pi out of it, so to speak. So my very first step would be 97.34 divided by 3.4. So 97.34 divided by 3.14, and you get an overall height of 31. Now I'm going to use this picture right here. So the overall height ends up being 31. Now it says the tire has a rim size of 15. So the rim size is 15. So what I don't know is what the two sidewalls are. But what I do know is that these sidewalls are exactly the same. So using algebra, you could say something along the lines of x plus 15 is equal to 31. Well, combining like terms, you get 2x plus 15 equals 31. You subtract 15, you get 2x is equal to 16. X is equal to 8. So that means these sidewalls would have to be 8 inches tall in order for the entire height to add up to 31. So you would say 8 inches. Now lastly, if a tire has a sidewall height of 7.75 and a circumference of 9.62, find the size of the rim. Now, again, these type of questions where you're asked to find the sidewall or the rim, you still have to use the first part, which is convert the circumference back to height. Okay, so I'm going to take 92.63, so 92.63, and divide that by 3.14. So 92.63 divided by 3.14, and I get 29.5 inches. So using my display, again, if you didn't have a display, all right. So let's play the I didn't have a display game here. So here's what I would do, and I'm just going to write up here just because I have more space. I'd create a tire, looks like a donut. I'd write a line off the outside to make it look like a height. So this would be 29.5. Okay, I know that my sidewall height is 7.75, so 7.75, 7.75. I don't know what my x is. All right, so I know that 7.75 plus x plus 7.75 equals 29.5. Well, I mean, in reality, you can make an equation, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtract out my two sidewalls, and then when I do that, I'll get my rim size. and I end up with a rim size of 14 inches. All right. Now, last question, and that is this. If John lived 2.5 miles from Archer and his tire had a circumference of 112 inches, how many times would his tire rotate on his way to school? Now, here's the thing that I want you to understand, and that is every time the tire turns and turns and turns and turns and turns, he's going 112 inches down the road. Now, the question is, how many 112 inches are there in 2.5 miles? Well, the problem is you have inches over here, you have miles over here. So you have to convert your miles to feet and then to inches. So to convert it to feet, I'm going to times it by 5,280 because that's how many feet there are. And when I do that, I get how many feet there are in 2.5 miles. But then I have to convert it to inches. So I'm going to times it by 12 inches. So 2.5 times 5,280 times 12, I get a number of 2.5 miles ends up being let's see, 158. So 158,400 miles. All right. I'm sorry, I said miles. I meant inches. Now, very simply, how many times will 112 go into this number? Well, divided by 112. Divided by 112. Your answer is how many times will the old school bus song, the tires on the bus go round and round? Well, the tires on John's car, the tires on John's car will go 1,414 rotations. So, and I rounded. There we go. Now, lastly, same exact question, except we're using a much further distance. So again, you are converting miles to inches. So 365 times 5,280. And I'm just going to go ahead and times it by 12 all in one step. Multiplication allows me just to do it all at once. And I get a relatively large number. 2, 3, 1, 2, 6, 4, 0, 0. 23,126. Now you're still going 112 inches per revolution, so divide by 112. So the wheels on John's car go round and round 206,400 rounding 486 times. So that's how you apply tire size to everyday situations. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.